Last week, the U.S. Preventive Services Task Force made a huge announcement that could have a major impact on families and your child's health. It's now recommending that all children as young as 8 be screened for anxiety and that children 12 and older be screened for depression during routine wellness checks. We're talking about children who aren't showing any symptoms or signs of a mental health problem, and that may be confusing or even scary for some parents. So joining us to help sort out what this all means for you and your family is Dr. Kishana Brooks. She is with the Chicago School of Professional Psychology. Dr. Brooks, thank you so much for joining me this morning. Good to have you. Let's just get right into this. Why is this health panel making this uniform recommendation for all children?
I think that the panel is really trying to take a preventative approach to make sure we're screening children early to determine if they're experiencing anxiety symptoms that could actually reach a clinical threshold.
Okay, so let's break this down. So routine screenings are going to take some of the uncertainty away for parents who might be worried about these things with their children. So when we start with the symptoms for 8 and younger, anxiety is what they're talking about screening for. So anxiety versus depression. And you say in anxiety, children are dealing with fear and worry. So tell me about the symptoms associated with that.
Sure, exactly. Fear and worry, it can manifest itself as body symptoms. Sometimes children will report a tummy ache or restlessness or tension, even irritability. It may also manifest itself as a child expressing chronic worry, perhaps being hypervigilant, which means they're monitoring their environment for threat. And so it's important to try to tap into some of these things that children are saying, but oftentimes these symptoms can go unnoticed where children are not able to put the words to the feelings
Right.
and thoughts that they're having.
I want to get those symptoms on screen because we do have a graphic that we should have up there right now for parents trying to figure out what the anxiety symptoms are. And, we talked about this: tummy aches, nail biting, change in communication patterns, sleeping problems, irritability. So many of these things can actually apply to so many children. So that's the hard part, is to be able to tell the difference, isn't it? And that's why these screenings are being asked for. So let's move to the next thing now, which is depression. You say different than anxiety because these are more feelings dealing with sadness and hopelessness. So let's take a look at these possible symptoms and let's talk about that.
Yeah, and depression, it has some similar characteristics as anxiety. And so thinking about irritability, that can exist in both depression and anxiety. But the major difference is that anxiety is related to that chronic and extreme experience of worry, whereas depression can really, as you have on the screen here, relate to feelings of sadness, a loss of interest in things that formerly brought the child joy, and appetite changes as well. And so there are some similarities, but it is important to kind of tease apart and pull apart the differences.
Okay, so what's involved in the screening for children as parents at home are watching and now saying, okay, this is going to be part of a routine screening. What's this going to mean for my child? What's involved?
Right. So a clinician is going to look at the duration of some of these symptoms. They're going to look at the frequency. They're going to look at the intensity level, because we all have levels of worry and fear. But what the clinician is looking for is how it impacts various domains in the child's life, including school-based activities, and also if it's happening very frequently at a very intense level, and for a long period of time.
Okay,
so that's what the assessment is really going to look at.
Okay, and so maybe I have a child that I didn't really notice that these things were happening. How does a doctor find this out during a screening? Is it a question and answer? Is that what it is?
It is absolutely a question and answer, and there are various types of screeners, but many of them revolve around a short amount of questions, and it's meant to screen and not diagnose. I do want to state that. It's really kind of our first line of defense, a first filter, and then a clinician will recommend next steps based on those answers.
So let's talk about those next steps, because not every parent wants to run to medication, which seems so many times happens. The last thing you want to do is put your child on medications. How do you get to the bottom of the issue to prevent it?
Right. So there are, of course, recommended treatments for anxiety disorders. And so again, we're looking at the clinical range of symptoms. And so we're looking at therapy. We're looking at also psychopharmacological options. So a clinician will be able to build a full, complete, what we call a case conceptualization to determine what the best treatment would be for the child with the understanding of the background and other parts of the context around the child.
As you said at the top of this interview here, it's all about prevention from making things get worse. And throughout the pandemic, anxiety has become such a problem for all age groups. So it's good to start as early as possible with intervention. Dr. Kishana Brooks, the Chicago School of Professional Psychology. Thanks so much for joining me this morning. Good to talk to you.